A woman in a tattered blazer stood on my porch at 10 p.m., rain streaming down her face, mud caking her shoes, and said 3 words that stopped my breath. I need shelter. The storm howled around us, thunder shaking the windows of my small countryside house, and for a moment, I forgot the quiet grief that had settled over the place since my wife passed. This stranger, with mascara smudged like tear tracks and a spine that still held pride even as she trembled, looked like she had run from something far more dangerous than the rain. My name is Callum Reed. I live on the edge of a small town, where the roads wind through fields and the nearest neighbor is a mile away. My daughter, Maeve, is 5. She has her mother's curly hair and her mother's kind eyes, and she is the only reason I get up each morning. We live in a cottage with peeling paint, a fireplace that crackles on cold nights, and a garden where Maeve helps me grow tomatoes and sunflowers. It is a simple life, one I built to honor my wife's memory, but it has been quiet, too quiet, until that stormy night. I had just tucked Maeve into bed, singing the lullaby her mother used to sing, when the knock came. Soft at first, then urgent, as if the person on the other side feared being swept away by the wind. I grabbed a lantern and pulled open the door, and there she was. Her blazer was torn at the sleeve, her blouse clinging to her skin, and her face held a mix of exhaustion and defiance. She did not look like someone who asked for help often. My car died on the back road, she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I walked for miles. This was the first house I found. I stepped aside, letting her in. The warmth of the fireplace hit her, and she shuddered. I have dry clothes, I said. Old ones, but clean. She nodded, and I fetched a flannel shirt and a pair of jeans that had belonged to my brother. When she returned from the bathroom, her hair towel dried and my clothes hanging loosely on her frame, she looked smaller, softer. I made her tea, boiling water on the stove, and she sat at the kitchen table, staring into the flame of the lantern. I am Elowen, she said, breaking the silence. Thank you for not turning me away. Maeve wandered into the kitchen a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw Elowen, then smiled. Who are you? She asked, climbing onto the chair next to her. Elowen's face softened. I am Elowen. I got stuck in the rain. Maeve nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stuffed rabbit, her favorite toy, the one she slept with every night. Here, she said, handing it to Elowen. He keeps me safe when I am scared. Elowen took the rabbit, her fingers brushing over its soft fur, and her eyes filled with tears. She blinked them away quickly, but I saw them. It was the first crack in the armor she wore, the first sign that she was human beneath the polished exterior. That night, I gave Elowen the guest room. She protested, saying she did not want to intrude, but she was too tired to argue. I sat on the couch, listening to the storm, and wondered who she was. There was something about her, the way she held herself, the faint mark of a designer watch on her wrist, the way she tensed when her phone buzzed in her pocket, that told me she was not from a small town. She was from a world of meetings and deadlines, of power and pressure, and she had run from it all. By morning, the storm had passed. The sun peeked through the clouds, and the air smelled of wet grass. Elowen emerged from the guest room looking more relaxed than she had the night before. She helped Maeve make pancakes, burning half of them, and laughed when Maeve got syrup on her chin. It was a sound that felt foreign in my house, a sound I had not heard since my wife died. The local mechanic called later that morning, saying Elowen's car would take at least 2 weeks to repair. You can stay, I said before I could think. As long as you need. Elowen's eyes widened, then she smiled, a small, genuine smile. Thank you, she said. That means more than you know. The days turned into weeks. Elowen fell into our routine easily. She woke up early and helped me make breakfast. She read stories to Maeve before bed. She even helped me fix the broken fence in the garden, her hands getting dirty for the first time in what I suspected was years. Maeve adored her, calling her Aunt Elowen and dragging her to the garden to show her every new flower that bloomed. Elowen, in turn, seemed to find peace in our simple life. She stopped checking her phone constantly. She laughed more. She began to look like someone who had finally let herself breathe. But I could tell she was hiding something. She would wake up before dawn and stand on the porch, staring at the road. She would get quiet when the news was on, especially when they talked about business. And once, when her phone rang, she stepped outside to answer it, her voice tight with anger. I did not ask questions. Some stories are not mine to hear. But one morning, I found her in the garden, barefoot in the dew, holding Maeve's stuffed rabbit. Her hands were trembling, and her face was pale. "I need to tell you something," she said. She was the founder of a tech company in the city, she told me. She had built it from the ground up, working 18-hour days, sacrificing everything for success. But a few months ago, she discovered that her closest partners had been stealing from her, lying to her, using her hard work for their own gain. She had confronted them that night, in a heated meeting that ended with her walking out. She had gotten into her car and driven, not knowing where she was going, just needing to get away from the greed and the betrayal. "I had everything," she said, her voice breaking. "Money, power, a reputation. But I had no one. No friends, no family, no one who cared about me, not really." I listened, saying nothing. Sometimes, people do not need advice. They just need someone to listen. "Losing everything is how we learn what matters," I said finally. "My wife used to say that. She thought success was not about what you have, but who you have beside you." Elowen nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I never understood that until now," she said. "Until I came here. Until I met you and Maeve. For a week, things were peaceful. Elowen seemed to let go of her past, embracing the quiet of our town. But then the black car arrived. It pulled up to the cottage one afternoon, sleek and expensive, and a man in a suit stepped out. He walked up to Elowen, who was playing with Maeve in the garden, and said something that made her face harden. I watched from the porch as they argued, the man gesturing wildly, Elowen standing tall, her jaw set. When he left, Elowen came to me, her eyes sad. "I have to go back," she said. "They need me to fix the company. To set things right?" I nodded. I did not want her to go. The cottage felt fuller with her there, brighter. But I knew she had to face her past. "Remember this," I said. "The peace you found here is not tied to this place. It is tied to you. To the person you are when you stop running." She hugged me, quickly, then knelt down and hugged Maeve. "I will come back," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise." She left the next morning. Maeve cried, clinging to Elowen's leg, and I stood at the door, watching as her car disappeared down the road. The cottage felt empty again. Maeve carried her stuffed rabbit everywhere, asking when Elowen would return. I told her soon, but I did not know if it was true. Months passed. The garden grew, and Maeve started school. I went back to my quiet life, but I found myself looking at the road often, wondering if Elowen would keep her promise. Then, one afternoon in spring, a letter arrived. It was in a plain envelope, with my name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a note from Elowen. She had gone back to the city, she wrote, and she had fixed the company, this time, on her own terms. She had fired the partners who betrayed her, hired people who shared her values, and stepped down as CEO to take a smaller role. She had also started a foundation, named after Maeve, to help single parents and families who needed a second chance. "You taught me that home is not a place," she wrote. "It is people. It is the warmth of a fireplace, the sound of a child's laughter, the feeling of being seen for who you truly are. I want that. With you. With Maeve." A week later, there was a knock at the door. Not urgent, not frantic, but soft, familiar. I opened it, and there she was. Elowen, wearing a simple dress and sandals, her hair loose, holding a small suitcase. The sun was shining, no storm in sight. "I came back," she said, smiling. "If you still want me." Maeve ran past me, throwing her arms around Elowen's legs. "You kept your promise," she shouted. Elowen knelt down, hugging her, and then looked up at me. Her eyes were calm, her smile genuine. That night, we sat in the garden, watching the sun set. Maeve played with her stuffed rabbit, Elowen held my hand, and the air was filled with laughter. The cottage no longer felt quiet. It felt like home, truly home. We do not have much. We still struggle to pay the bills sometimes. The paint is still peeling, and the fence still has a few loose boards. But we have each other. We have love. We have the kind of happiness that money cannot buy. That stormy night, a stranger knocked on my door. I opened it, not knowing it would change everything. Love is not about grand gestures or perfect lives. It is about opening your heart to the unexpected. It is about finding family in the most unlikely places. It is about the storm that breaks you, and the person who helps you put the pieces back together. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic of unexpected love, like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share emotional tales of healing, family, and the courage to start over. Comment below, kindness wins, if you have ever opened your heart to a stranger. We want to hear your story.